Hi. So today's message is titled Check Your Lenses. Why check your lenses? Because we all know how to react, how to behave, how to perceive God when things are doing okay. Like when things are great, we don't hesitate to say you're a good father. Great is your faithfulness to me. But how do we behave when things are wrong? Like when we are sinking, when we're at a point of loss, when things are messed up and it's not even our fault. How do we see God? How do we perceive Him through all this? Because the truth is we need to trust God during the good times, but we need to trust Him even more during the bad. So it's really important how we perceive Him. And that's why I'm here today to tell you, check your lenses. Because if you can only see your pain and not God, then you're missing the bigger picture. And best believe, the bigger picture is His will, His desires, His purposes over your life. And people, myself included, will always come here, bombard you with scriptures trying to encourage you, like everything works for the good of those who love the Lord. Take heart, because He who has already overcome the world lives in us. Therefore, the power that overcame death lives in us. And you're just like, yeah, I know I'm going to be okay in the end. I know God is going to use this as a testament of His glory in the end. I know God is going to turn this around for my own good in the end. But I'm in pain right now. I am hurting right now. So how do I live in the now? And the first thing you need to do is focus on God. Let's take David, for example. Like when you're picking a fight, one of the finer details that you can't afford to miss is the fact that your opponent is 9 feet tall. It's not that David didn't see how tall Goliath was, but he didn't concentrate on how big he was, but rather how big his God was. And that's why he told him that the Lord will conquer you and I will kill you, because he knew that God was going to do all the heavy lifting and all he had to do was slay him. And the vice versa is also true. When we stop focusing on God, when we focus on the situations, when we lose sight of Him, that's when we stumble, that's when we start being overwhelmed. Let's take an example of Peter in the Bible. This guy walked on water. Like that thing you do every day, he did the same thing on water. He was doing just fine until the moment he shifted his attention from Jesus, where he was going, to the strong wind which was surrounding him. And that's when he stumbled and the Lord gave him his hand. And I'm not saying that whatever situation you're in is not tough or hard. I dare say it's just as real as the storm that Peter and his fellow disciples were in. But all I'm saying is focus on the one who can call that storm to be still. Focus on the one person who can calm it with just a word of his mouth. And how do we focus on Him? By saturating ourselves with His word in us and God's people around us. And by God's people, I mean people who are going towards the same thing, people who are living the kind of life that God desired us to live. And those are the people you need to surround yourself with. While it's a given, it's a surety that He will indeed get you out. Because I believe that some of you, the only reason you've clicked on this video is because God wanted you to hear this, that whatever you're going through, He'll get you out. But while you're still in it, trusting Him is the only thing that will keep you sane. And how will you trust someone you don't know? And how will you know Him without delving in His word, so that you can know the promises He has for you, that though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you'll fear no evil, for He comforts you, that He is close to the brokenhearted. Therefore, right there inside the pit, He's there with you, the same way He was there with Joseph. And right there when you're crying at 3 a.m., He's there with you, comforting you. When you need someone to hold your hand, He's there with you. And the only way you know a lot of all this is if you delve into His word, and you will know who He is in your life. I also say that you need to surround yourself with the right people around you, because we all know that we are a product of who we are around the most. Therefore, you can only be as good as the people who you are around. So if you're around negative people, toxic people, people who speak vain words that shake your faith and trust in Him, well, don't I have news for you? Another thing that we need to do is bring our pain and our questions to God, because people may comfort you, but they may never really understand what God is doing in your life, because the Bible categorically says that His ways are not our ways, because they are much higher than our ways. Therefore, we won't always understand those ways because they're much higher than ours. So, of course, you're bound to have questions. God expects you to have questions, because you're only human, you don't understand what's going on. Therefore, God is not afraid of your questions. So don't be afraid to ask them. And best believe, He'll send people, He'll send angels, He'll send circumstances, and He'll even show up Himself. And one day you'll be able to say, that was God. That had to be God. God answered my questions when I asked him. The third and the last thing that I'm sharing that you need to do when you're in pain is you need to reshape your understanding of God. Because when you're going through it, it's pretty easy for you to think that God is ignoring you, for you to think that God is punishing you. And it's at that moment that you need to reshape and refocus on him. Because as I've just said, when you lose focus of him, you will lose focus on the one person who not only feels exactly what you're feeling, but he can completely turn it around and he'll use it. So as I end, why do we suffer? Like, why is there so much pain and hurt in this world? Because we live in a fallen world and dozens of other reasons, but I'm only going to focus on two. Number one is suffering produces intimacy with God. Just like in any relationship, close bonds and the best relationships are formed in times of adversity when you're going through trials. That's why they say a friend in need is a friend indeed. And therefore, we might never really get to the level that God desires of us to have a relationship with him until all our self-sufficiency is stripped away and we are there vulnerable at his feet, and he's the only one who can come through for us at that moment. And it's at that moment that you'll be able to say that the God of the mountains is the same God of the valleys. Just like Job, you'll be able to say that my ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. The second reason why we go through suffering is because suffering equips us with the ability to comfort other people who are also suffering. Because people who are going through it, people who are going through suffering, they need people who have also endured to tell them that there's hope at the end of the tunnel. It's not all tunnel. At some point, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And they're really justifiably skeptical of people who appear to have led lives of ease coming and telling them that there's hope. Like, God will come for you. And because they'll be like, what do you know about God coming through for you? You haven't gone through anything. And that's why they need you. And it's at that moment that you will remember exactly how you felt, exactly what you went through. And you'll remember how God got you out of it. And you'll be able to say that the same way he did it for me, he'll do it for you.
In the middle of my storm, in the middle of my trial, I'll still bless you. When I'm in the middle